Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Come get some.
First world, come in and take a seat. Pay us no attention, it's all conspiracy. We have satire and parody, some funny, some perverse. If none of it's offensive to you, you'd be the first.
Welcome, everybody, to Holden's 11. Got a terrific show lined up for you. I'm very excited to bring our special guests. We're going to take a quick second and talk about their projects and also take a look into the creative minds of today's hottest creators. Without further delay, I'm going to bring them in and introduce them. We're going to introduce you tonight to Steph Cannon. How you doing, Steph?
Good. How are you? How's it going?
Real good, man. It's great to finally meet you. You know,
I know.
I've talked.
I was going to surprise you today. I'm like, how are we not Facebook friends already?
I wondered that too, and you know, it happened kind of accidentally. And
yeah, it happens. We'll have it. It's
okay. Okay, yeah, and you know, I only know Matt peripherally, and you know, we've been on podcasts at the same times and things, but I am familiar with your work, and I can't wait to talk to you about it.
Absolutely.
And speaking of your other half, without further delay, we'll bring him. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt Knowles.
What's going on, everybody? How you guys doing out there? What's up, Tim? What's up, Steph? How you doing?
Hey, hey.
It's great to see you guys. It's great to see you guys.
Thank you
And
for having us.
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And I got to tell you, first off, I'm excited because this is my first live broadcast. So I want to tell all the viewers at home, you're basically guaranteed to see me screw up. So if you're keeping track, if there's a scorecard or anything, yeah, it'll be a good time. And what I really want to do, I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about this latest project, which is Misfits Clubhouse.
Yeah, we got Misfits Clubhouse, Sharks, Dragons, and Little Red Wagons. That's the issue that is up there on Kickstarter right now.
Yeah, and pretty close to funding. So we're going to see if we can get you guys some customers too.
Well, that would be great. That'd be great. We all of us that have been on Kickstarter right now know that the economy is really tough when it comes to Kickstarter campaigns. There's a lot of campaigns out there, but we know that the economy that we're all in, inflation, less money in our pockets is making it a lot more difficult to be able to get campaigns where you want to be. So every backer, every dollar, every share is really, really appreciated.
Yeah, well said, Matt. And the economy in general is challenging. And whenever we talk about that stuff, I like to say it might be more important than ever to support creatives. And thank you very much, both of you, for what you do and for creating these cool projects in what many people would find to be challenging times. And I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. I'm going to start out with Steph here, which is one of the things for tonight. In both of your guys' cases, very talented creators, right? Musicians, artists, writers, graphic designers. I don't think anybody would disagree with me if I said you guys have some of the best videos in the market. And
thank you.
Of course. And Steph, I want to start with you. When we talk about the various creative things that you could have made, how did you choose comics and why did you choose comics?
So I wanted to be a writer since I was about 10 years old. I entered a short story contest with our local newspaper and actually won. And since then, that's all I wanted to do.
Congratulations.
So I did the raising kids things, and now they're teenagers, and so I'm able to actually do something for myself. And so back in 2018, I decided, you know what, the stories that I have in my head, I'm actually envisioning as either movies or in comic form. And I just didn't realize it at the time. So I spent about 6 months learning how to write comics, write a comic script, what's involved in that, because you think you know how to do it, but you need to be very direct and specific when you're handing it, unless you're talented enough to write and draw, in which case you don't need to write a script necessarily. And
would you mind if I ask you
from there we just
your winning short story? Would you mind if I ask you what was your short story about?
Okay, so it was so I was 10, and it was about it was for Halloween. It was supposed to be scary short stories.
I love it already.
And it was about a woman who was driving on a country road at night, and it was raining, and she hit a dog, and she finds out that it was like the ghost of the dog that attacked her when she was a child. So,
and what was it called?
It was called The Dog.
Steph, I love it. I love stories like that. And, and that's kind of what I want to do tonight. I hope you guys enjoy this. I want to kind of find out a little bit about you as people and what some of what your background is, and I think that's a super charming story. And it was not just limited to kids. So I beat out adults to win. So nice.
They apparently liked what I had to write. So somewhere out there, I think my mom has a copy of that newspaper still, where it's my picture in the story. But yes, so comics I sort of fell into the realm. I had a friend who was writing a graphic novel. And I said, you know what? I want to learn how to do that too. I think that's what I need to be doing. And there was a online comics competition called Ghost City at the time. And they had a category for one-page comics. And I thought, that sounds fun and challenging. One page, Yeah. And I did it and got finalist. And from there, I just sort of fell into the indie comic world.
Well, welcome. We're happy to have you. And Matt, let's go to you next. So, and the same question, like you can do a lot of things, right? And what was it that drew you to comics and why did you choose comics?
So I kind of feel like comics kind of chose me more than I chose comics because, my whole life I was a musician and I always was playing music, always was lyric writing, always was in that kind of big fluffy kind of environment. but I got really burnt out on just doing music. The industry just has a lot of issues in it, and I just got really burnt out. So I took about 7 to 8, 9 years somewhere that I lost track of how long it actually was. But I wanted to get back into playing, but I wanted there to be more to the story. So I, started writing like a couple of songs with a little bit of a backstory. And more songs turned into an album, turned into a short story, turned into an illustrated novel. It was ebook into an illustrated novel. And then I was releasing what I thought was comic issues. And then Steph and I met in January of 2018, and she had the comic writing understanding, and I had a lot of the business understanding, and the two of us were able to quickly and easily meld the strengths that we had and fill in the weaknesses where the other had. And she really helped me to realize, hey, you know what, if you're going to write a comic story, you need to learn more about how to actually create a comic. And being a lyric writer is completely different than writing a comic. Writing prose is completely different than writing a comic.
Sure.
In prose and in lyrics, you can spend, lines and lines or pages and pages talking about walking up a set of stairs. And if in comics you take more than one panel to show going up those stairs, then you've not done it right. So
Right.
it's like learning an opposite skill. But it was fun kind of learning that alongside someone, knowing you had skills to bring to the table, but being kind of like an infant in the industry at the same time and seeing yourself kind of grow. So it was kind of fun to be able to do it. So that's kind of where I felt like comics kind of chose me.
Yeah, that's interesting too. And I'm glad you mentioned that because, we've talked on a couple of shows about there's a curious link between songwriters and musicians and comic book makers. I'm one of those fellows also. And my very first project that I worked on, which was, by the way, it's, things grow. This is my least successful project, but it was a CD where it was 4 songs, like what they used to call an EP. And they were robots that were making the music. And when you open up the CD, it unfolded, and it was a little bit of a comic book about their adventures. And of course, that became a 3-issue series, which was Socket. And that was in the days before Kickstarter, so I didn't even know about Kickstarter yet. But, it's many of the creators that I've met have been musicians. And I love to say to anybody that'll listen, yeah, Greg, there he is, man, another perfect example. It's a little bit like when you put your band together, right? Like you see the artist and you go, well, man, that's the guy I want on lead guitar.
Yes.
And then you see the letterer and you go, that's the guy I want singing. And one thing that I do that's a little different, when you put them up on stage, let them play. Like, I think that if you hire an artist based on, and I should clarify, I'm a writer, right? So I don't do the art myself. And by the way, we're going to save that for you, Rodney, the art portion of this question. But when you hire your artist, it's a little bit, I use the metaphor like this. If you hired, let's say, Eddie Van Halen, by any chance, anybody an Eddie Van Halen fan?
I'm a respecter of Eddie Van Halen. Respect, of course.
Yeah, great guitarist. But if he got up on stage and started playing a solo in your band, I don't think anybody would say, well, Eddie, not like that.
Yeah.
They wouldn't say that. So when you hire an artist, you have to have the confidence to give them a little bit of latitude in interpreting your script and your panels. And as long as it doesn't interfere with the flow of the story, of course. Yeah. But if the artist says something like, hey, it might be cool if it did this or did that, or maybe we do 9 panels here instead of 6, listen to your artist and let them sort of grow along with the project. And I think that's a sort of the connection between music and comics is especially prevalent right there.
Yeah, I think you have to always make sure you've got there's a foundation, and as long as everybody's staying on the road, because everybody has to be on that road. Doesn't matter if you're in the right lane, center lane, left lane, as long as the artist is not wanting to drive over into the bushes, that's fine.
Right.
We're working on a project right now that's not Misfits. We're working on another spin-off of Heirs of Isildur, and our artist has really gotten into the lore behind the story. And there's a lot of times, even tonight, he'll message me like, hey, what do you think about this character wearing X outfit in this scene? And we actually did like a couple of months and did like 15 pages of costuming and character designs before we even started on page 1 of the story. And so he was able to like help us craft some of those things with his art style. But there could be other times, like you said, where we're like, hey, we can't make that happen here because it wouldn't make sense for that character to be wearing this in that spot. Or,
Right.
If we did this with the scenery, it's going to throw off the plot point that's happening 30 pages later. So there's times he has to pull back and understand the plot, but there's other times that he's able to really grow and do stuff that we're just like, wow, we wouldn't have thought about doing that at all. And how can we accentuate that and go back and tweak the script to make sure it matches what he's doing?
Yeah, and just a quick comment for the viewers. This is about the Heirs series, which I'm a follower of that series. You guys have done a terrific job in building the lore. Like, I'm kind of a nerd, right? Like, I like the character designs and the lore and how it's all sort of interconnected. That's the part that I really dig, and I think you guys did a great job with that series.
Definitely appreciate that. And yet over time, if you're someone that has gotten the Perilous Prospects book 2, you'll see in the very end of it, this is what we just got from the printers 3 days ago. Here we go. We just got these from the printers 3 days ago. So if you were someone that backed the campaign, you've already got the PDF, and we'll be shipping these things out shortly. At the very back page, there's an ad for Misfits Clubhouse, but there's also an ad for the spinoff, which actually follows this guy, which is one of our characters, Keto. And so we get to follow Keto in his realm a little bit. We'll talk later on, in the months following, what's actually going to be happening in that story. But it's been really fun for us to explore another realm, another area of the world fictionally that will tie back into Heirs. Perfect. All right, and next, Rodney, man, welcome aboard. It's great to see you.
Hey, long time no see.
Yeah, right. For those of you that don't know, I'm also a little bit of friends with Rodney. And by the way, we just worked on a video where we talk about the top UFO sightings, and it came out great. I can't wait to show it to you guys. That's going to be next Tuesday or Wednesday. I'll release that. So if you're a UFO fan at all, it's very interesting and informative, and Rodney did a terrific job with that.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
Yeah, I really had a good time. I'm super into the UFO thing. But I want to ask you the same question that I asked these guys, which is, you're a talented guy. As we said before, you could do a lot of things, right? There's so many avenues these days that are open to so many of us. Why did you, first of all, what were your influences in going toward comics, and why did you choose comics?
Oh, man. My influences were Marvel Comics growing up as a kid. And then I went to the movie theater and I saw this movie called Star Wars in 1977.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. And that just changed everything. It was just like, wow. And then I literally started, before Star Wars, I was a fan. And I read any Avengers or Fantastic Four or Justice League. And I lived in a small town in Indiana, and that's all I could get a hold of. And, the indie market didn't exist back then.
Right.
So that was my initial influx into it. And I discovered Neil Adams, and I was just a kid. And I realized that there was something about this guy's artwork that was just so much better than everybody else's, or it just appealed to me more than everybody else's. And I started realizing the whole world of comics started opening up to me. And then when I went and saw Star Wars, I was like, oh, wow. And after that, I literally went home and started writing stories and drawing and creating character. I mean, I've been drawing since I was 4 years old. I was 9 when I saw Star Wars. And those were the big major influences for me. And as far as why comics, I think because they've always been a part of my life, and it's something that I always knew I could do. And I just did it. It never dawned on me that it was something I couldn't do. But so I just did it. And we went to, me and my friends from high school, we went to New York City in 1990. And all these guys that were the same age as me, I was 22 years old. And all these guys that were current in the industry they were on the other side of the tables. And I'm like, I've been reading these guys. I know who these guys are. What's the difference between them and me? They did it.
Right.
So, and we were in the process of doing it. We just hadn't published yet. And that just really fueled me because, from a small town and then going back to Cincinnati, Ohio, it was still a small city. Really just going to New York City and the energy and the vibe of the city, and it never slept. And I just ate that up and I loved it. And everybody at that time, had to be in New York City to work for Marvel Comics, and just that hub, and it was like a drug. I'm still chasing that dragon, 30 some years later. And I just love it. It's just, I don't know what I'd do if I weren't doing comics in some way, shape, or form.
Well, and comics are an interesting medium, right? I'll quick answer for myself in that, to be honest, I was very similar on a start to Steph in that I had written a short story when I was 12, and it was a little horror short story, and it was sort of Edgar Allan Poe-ish, you know what I mean? And I didn't win the awards or anything. I already wasn't up to her level even back then, unfortunately. But, I can say that the writing bug sort of bit me, right? And I had, for a number of years, I was a short story writer, and some of you guys know this already. And I can proudly state that I never had any success with short story writing. And even, the short stories are actually pretty decent. They're not bad, but it's a very different path, right? Like you submit to magazines and anthologies and you try to get into collections and so forth. Well, and actually not too long ago, this is probably 2016 or so, I was friends with a fellow by the name of Martin Dunn, a Floridian. Any of you guys know Martin Dunn? You might know him, right?
Yeah, we've done some shows with Martin before.
Yeah, and he's a musician and stuff primarily these days and doing great. But he used to have a thing they called the bullpen. And what they did, that was when he was with CAE Studios. If you had a script, they would sort of take you under their wing and help you to produce a comic book. And I was at a free comic book day down there in Tampa. I used to live in Sarasota, as I was telling Matt. And this was a place that used to be in Tampa. And what they were doing, it was a free comic book day, and you could go around and meet all the people. And Martin was there, and he was pitching some of his books. And he had a tattoo, which was Miracle Man. And I don't know if you guys are Miracle Man fans, but he was a little bit more of an obscure character that I was super into. And right away, we kind of hit it off, you know what I mean? So he said, hey, I work for this studio and blah, blah, blah. And he said something to the effect of they were looking to hire new people and they had artists, but they didn't have enough writers. And I said, hey, man, I'm a writer and I had just written this script. In those days, I was submitting what they call pitches for animated series. And in this case, it was the one about the robot rock band, which is called Socket. And he said, hey, well, shoot me a script, email me one. And, you never know. Well, maybe one day we'll get together. Well, I shoot him the script and, of course, didn't hear anything. It might have been 2 or 3 months later. But I remember him calling me on the phone. He said, hey, man, I loved your script. We're going to make a book. And whoa, okay. And we would have like meetings and they sort of walked me through the process. And anyway, we made the first issue. And what I quickly learned is that as far as team building and things, and this is going to lead into our next question, because one thing that I've noticed about Steph and Matt, and it's true of Rodney also, you have kind of a quality team around you. And I'm a big believer in that the sum is more than the parts. And so once I learned how to sort of make the comics, I started to go, you know what, if I started to gather talented people around me, that's when these sort of magical things start to happen. And I want to lead into that with Steph. If you could tell us a little bit, Steph, what was when you say the very formative times of your first book, what was your creative team like? Or was it just you in the very first step?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I think one of the first things that Matt and I bonded over was, and I don't want to say, because it's going to sound negative to say frustrations with the artists, but in the beginning, the artists that we had were, we didn't know what we wanted necessarily. So it was kind of the fault of both parties. Mm-hmm. We now know exactly what we want out of an artist. When both of us started, we didn't know what expectations to have for an artist necessarily. And the ones that we chose weren't necessarily a good fit for the style that we had and the urgency that we needed our stories done, essentially. So that was one of the first things we bonded over, because we said, how do we deal with this? Because it's very difficult when you're working with an artist and you're having creative differences, because they're a human being and you don't necessarily, and it's not even necessarily that you don't like their art. It's just that it's just not a good fit. And that's a common thing in any creative realm. Actually, it's much more common in TV and in television and movies. That's why you always hear about, directors falling out of a project and, they say it's creative differences. There's a reason for that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you hate each other. It's just there's a dissonance there a little bit.
Right. You have to kind of gel.
Yeah, you have to gel. And we've learned over the years, and honestly, we're still learning. We're still learning what exactly that means. And as our stories evolve, the needs and expectations that we have for an artist evolve as well, too. So in the beginning, it was really interesting. We kind of were working with a singular artist, each of us. And we just kind of were realizing, there's some things we need to change, essentially. And so the art team that we have working with us now, the artists that we have for our stories, and this particular story, as we're talking about Misfits Clubhouse, Raheel Mosin is great. He is who you want if you're doing, and I don't want to say animated because that's not right, but it looks like an animated television show.
Right. And by the way, great job on that series. I love the character design. And one of the things I like the most about it, Steph, is it doesn't look like anything else.
Yeah.
First of all, it's very different from your other series. So that was kind of a gutsy move, right?
Yes, it was. And that's been, it's been a challenge in a way for us. And I think, and we talk about this almost daily, especially now that we're doing the Kickstarter campaign. We never set out saying that we were going to do children's books or all ages or family friendly or whatever term you want to call it. Whatever term you want to call it. I don't feel like there's a right or wrong answer for that. But Matt was writing Heirs of Isildur when I met him. That's the Steampunk Time travel series that we have. And I've jumped on board and helped to co-write that. And we've had some spinoffs from that. We've had a medieval fantasy series. And one of the things we pride ourselves on is we're not in the business of necessarily doing adult-oriented. Not that
right, and save that thought because Matt and I touched on this last night. That's one of the questions coming up.
But but it's they're not necessarily for kids either. I mean, if you have it out on your table and your 6-year-old picks it up, you don't have to rip it out of their hands or anything. So this is just sort of naturally came about, and we've had a blast writing it. We've had a blast for parents. We have kids. All those years that I spent reading stories to my kids are paying off now.
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure that it was something that, and we say that, this is for fans of Wreck-It Ralph, Gravity Falls, Fairly Odd Parents, but it's also not like anything else that's out there.
Okay, I buy that. And Matt, maybe can you expand on that a little? And let's go with the angle of like when you're choosing your creative team for a project, what are the elements that you look for from the art team?
Well, and one thing that I will go back just slightly onto one of the things that Steph said. I'll be a little bit not as nice about it. When we first met, we had the artist issues. We were both having some pretty dark times, but neither one of us realized how dark it was until the other one was like, dude, you are getting screwed over by that current artist right now. They are not doing you right. And so one of the things that we've looked for is people that have integrity. Rodney's down here. Really like Rodney, really like the stuff that Rodney does with Hasm Productions. We haven't worked with Rodney yet, but if we were considering an artist to work with, Rodney would be the kind of guy that we would consider, because you have to look for affordability, you have to look for reliability, and you have to look for talent. And all of those things have to be there. And you also have to have communication. And, all those things have to be there. And, you have to do your research. If you see that somebody has been in the chats and, hey, I worked with X artist and they didn't deliver my stuff on time. People don't understand how harmful that is as a writer and as a creator. Rodney would never do this, but we're going to use Rodney as an example since he's the artist. But let's say that Rodney knew that our deadline was on January 1st, and Rodney doesn't deliver it till February 1st. And then the next guy is a couple weeks late. The next guy is a couple weeks late. That's going to harm our ability to satisfy our fans, our supporters. Mm-hmm. It's going to harm our ability to put stuff out at tables, at shows. It's going to push other projects back. It's going to push Kickstarters back. I mean, there's this whole snowball effect. So we're always trying to look for people that understand that this is a business, but treat it with that human care. I know that sounds pretty grand and huge. But
Matt, I totally agree with you. And then I'm going to ask that same question to Rodney, but I just have a quick comment in that And I think this is true of all the people in this room because I've had some personal interactions with you. And I just met Steph tonight, but she seems nice enough to me. You know, I'm a little bit of an old school guy. I tend to do better if I meet the person and chat with the person. Like it's so much more than just cutting a check to your artist and saying, turn in 6 pages Friday. Like, you know, I work a lot with Erwin Arosa. He's like my main guy these days. And we talk every day, even if there's not a project. Like I ask him how his kids are doing. And he calls and asks, my mom was sick. He's asking about my mom. And you mentioned as if that almost sounds a little corny in a way, but the fact is we are all in it together. And we sometimes lose sight of the human element. So returning back to Rodney now. So we're talking a little bit about quality teams and Hasm Productions. Man, you got a bunch of quality people around you. So I'm going to ask you the same question, but a little different. Like, how did you find your team? And I guess I'm also going to ask, you're bringing Chad on board, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to hear a little bit about both those.
Okay. A lot of losses. Like Matt said, there's a reason it's taken us 2+ years to do 4 issues of Roadkill Rampage. So I'll just leave that there. But it is. When you meet people and you think that you're on the same page and you jump in the pool together, and then you wait and you don't know yet. You really don't know. You think you know. But when the deadline is missed and then there's a phone call, there's no phone call returned, or there's an excuse, or they don't answer a text, what do? You know, And like Matt said, it pushes everything back and back and back and back. And then you start getting a bad reputation. Oh, they never put anything out. Well, wait a second. You know, I've got a stack of scripts over here that are done, you know, and it's just, when you find that team, that dream team, hold on to it as long as you can, because it is invaluable in this game, because it's everything. It really is, you know, because those are the people that are going to help you facilitate your dream and put out your product to the people.
Right. Yeah. Well said.
So you got to do your homework. Like Matt said, pay attention to the conversations that are going on in chat rooms, watch other podcasts, and people might joke about missing a deadline or something, and then you'll pick up on a comment or something like that. That's all stuff you have to be aware of. Yeah. Because that's going to affect a decision that you might make, or a phone call that you might make, you know, asking about somebody. And if you hear it and it's laid out there for you, then that's, you don't have to waste your time with that, because it's already been laid out for you.
Well, I agree with you 100%. And some of this I like to point out to people because I have some experience now. And when I say things, it is definitely not, well, Tim really knows what he's doing because he's so smart. What I'm telling you is I did it wrong the first couple of times, and I can tell you certain things to avoid. And one of them is the best cover guy or girl. When I say guy, I could sometimes mean a male or female, right? The best cover guy is not necessarily the best page guy. And the best page guy is not necessarily the best cover guy. It's two very different skill sets. And
absolutely agree.
Yeah. And that's something that I'd had to learn. And the other thing is that I'm going to retreat on something I said earlier, because I've worked with it.
Can't do it.
Well, we talk about, we love to give the artists latitude a little bit and to let them interpret scripts. And I'm the same way. But man, when I say that, I should also mention, use a little bit of caution, because what you sometimes get is sometimes artists also want to become writers. And man, I totally respect that. But again, those are two very different skills, right? Like there's a reason why they don't let the airplane mechanic fly the plane, because they're both very good at two different things. And sometimes when you get into too much interpretation, you have to say, well, actually, this isn't about the fight scene. It's about the character development right here, which is something that a writer might be more dialed into. So
yeah, the big thing that we see when it comes to that is like an artist may not know where the script is going later on, or where we're going to go a couple issues down the way. And sometimes it's like, oh, it'd be really cool for us to put this in the first 5 pages. And we're like, well, we can't do that now, Because if we do that now, then we are completely destroying where the stories go through. We have to have a build to get to that and make that point be really good.
Or maybe a reveal, like, look, this is, let's say, character X. This is character X you're seeing that's coming up in the background secretly, but we don't want the reader to know this just yet. It's just a silhouette or something. You're not going to see her till page 17. So that's a good point, Matt.
Yeah, and I will tell people if it's something that I'm not drawing, I'm giving a script to another person. I always say it's a roadmap. It's a guide. It's not a roadmap. And there are 3 scenes that have to be exactly how, because I will thumbnail out everything. First, I will ask them if they want thumbnails. If they don't want them, I don't bother. But I will tell them that there were 3 or 4 scenes that have to be this way, and I will thumbnail them out, and I will say, this has to happen. They don't need to know why. If they want to know why, I'll tell them. But I always say, hey, it has to be this way for a certain reason. So make sure you draw it this way.
So that's a good point. So now, even when you write scripts, you send thumbnails to an artist?
Yes.
That's
cool. I will send I do layouts, like blueprint layouts of a bar, a strip club, and where the stage is at, where the seats are positioned, the exits, and all of that. I did that. And then there's a scene where a character is bounced back and forth between other characters. And I drew the A goes to B, B goes to C, C goes to D, D goes to here. And that's the end point. And I drew it on a piece of paper and I arrows and everything. So he had it and he knew the correct way to position the panels for flow.
Right.
And he didn't realize that it was in the file at first. And he sent me a message. He's like, hey, can you hop on StreamYard real quick? And I was like, dude, it's in the file. I did a diagram. He's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, and to me, that sounds like a very useful tool. I typically don't do that. I'm not, I have pretty detailed panel descriptions and I use camera angles. And I think I mentioned briefly, initially this started as, I used to write these little pitches for animated series. I got a cousin who's a director. So, you start to learn the camera angles and you hang out with them a couple of times and they all talk like that. So I came by it sort of naturally, but the best artists, I think, can interpret that. And like, what's a good way to say this? Like I always have a very detailed, let's say it's a 9-panel page, but at the top, I always put what I call the beat. And it says, basically she walks into the room and she doesn't know that the werewolf is behind her and the moon is shining. Like a general over encompassing, this is what's on that page. Because sometimes an artist interpreting it visually, there's a certain rhythm to panels, but it's like you said, he has to know where the A is and where the Z is. Mm-hmm. The rest can be interpreted a little bit, but A and Z better be on there.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you one of the things that we've found, which is interesting, is we work with artists from all over the world, which I'm sure you guys do as well, is that there are some things that we take for granted that just to somebody that is not from our country, our culture, are completely foreign. Misfits Clubhouse is a great example. Rahil's from India, and there are some things. One of the main stories in the first issue is called Pinball Madness. Everything in Misfits Clubhouse is told in a short story format. Around most of them center around these 4 kids, Miki, Stig, Fairy, and Slothy. And there's a story called Pinball Madness where the kids get stuck in a pinball machine and they have to play their way out. And to us, we're like, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen. Pinball Madness. They get stuck in a pinball machine. And Rahil's like, I've never played a pinball machine before. He's in India. Like that's just not something that's there. So we had to go all the way back to literal square one. This is what a flipper is. This is what a bumper is. This is how you score.
Right.
This is how you lose your turn. And it was really neat. Watching Rahil kind of have this childlike innocence. Hey, can I put like a trampoline over here? Can I put a trampoline pit over here? Is that something we can do with the pinball? So it
was pretty fun going out to dinner one night and going to an arcade, like and taking pictures of the arcade and being like, this is for work. We have to go to this arcade.
We literally went to an arcade. And we're taking pictures.
We played the pinball machines and sent the pictures, and we took videos and sent them to Rahil. It was fun.
Nice.
Yeah, that does sound pretty cool. It does sound pretty cool.
Yeah, you just never know what stuff somebody's going to need and what stuff they don't. So we try to over explain. People say that we had an artist one time that we did one book for us. He's like, man, he goes, I want to work with you guys again just so I can work with your scripts, because we do all of our scripts in Google Sheets so that way it's a live document. There's never a chance of being like, oh, well, you didn't get revision 3.6.7b in the email. Oh, I'm working off of A. It's a live document. We can see when the artist is up there. If we need to make a correction or they don't understand with some of the direction, we can go up there and change it in real time. And we're just very organized about that. That comes from my white collar spreadsheet business background, and it just kind of translated over into what we do here. But it helps, keeps a lot of things organized, and it saves from an efficiency standpoint. We can put links in there. We always try to put graphical aids, character things. We'll like link over to a Google Doc thing that's got, character bios and things, or character images and stuff there. That doesn't mean they have to go with those, but at least they have something to be able to start from as references, because we feel like, hey, if there's references there and they don't need them, okay, that's great. But if they don't have references and they do need them, we've just made the project, lag ourselves, and we don't ever want to be the bottleneck on our side. Interesting.
And I'd like to kind of expand on that as well. I'm going to ask you guys about your writing process, and I'll start with Steph, and we'll go around. When you're writing your script, do you start, well, and feel free to pancake this out a little bit, because probably how you do it is different than what I'm even imagining. But do you start with your characters and you know what they're all going to do? Or do you start with your concept and populate the characters into the concept?
It's really interesting. It's evolved over time. And I always say, and I make fun of myself, because as a writer, when I was first starting out, and even now I still have a habit of doing it, where I would come up with the simplest concept ever and be like, I want to write a story about that. So it would be like, I want to write a jungle treasure hunting story. And that would be the only thing that I would have, And I would just know in my head that that's the story that I was going to write. And then slowly, then I would kind of develop the characters out, and then the story would come along. So for Matt and I, it's been kind of interesting. Misfits has been the most interesting, because Earls was his creation before I came along. And our medieval fantasy series, Tales from Nocturnia, was a spinoff from Earls. So that was a very organic process too. Misfits was something where the characters were completely different and new and unique to anything that we had ever done. And the concept, the original concept, Misfits, even before it was even called or considered Misfits, was a very different story. It was still going to be more YA, but it was much more, a little bit more serious. And there was just something about it that didn't, and who knows, we may even go back to it one day. You never know. But there was something about it that just wasn't gelling with us. And somehow over time, we came up with this concept of making the kids a little bit younger. And I remember too, when we were talking about the characters, we were sitting there and we said, it'd be funny if it was like a boy and a girl, but then they had animal friends that were just treated like normal kids. And so we said, we don't want to do like a dog or a cat or, something that you would see. It's more common. We want to do something silly. And I can't even remember now who said what, but one of us said, I think I said ferret, and then Matt said sloth. We just said, what's the first animal that comes to mind?
Yep.
So the writing process it's a little different for each story that we do. But normally we're coming up with a concept first. It's been easy with spin-off stories because we already have the character, because it's the spin-off is dealing with a character from that other story. So and with Misfits, it's kind of nice because they're a little episodic, and so each story is its own contained thing that involve the kids, and you don't necessarily have to start in order. So that makes it really easy too. So yeah, it's very different, because I used to do the very general, I'm going to write a script and, I'm going to, break down each panel, which we still do. But it's when you're, and I always say, because the thing that we get a lot, because we co-write everything, is how do you guys do that? And I said, really, it's really no different. Comics is one of the only mediums in content creation where the vast majority of writers are writing solo. If you look at television, if you look at film, it's always a room full of writers. Right. It's hardly ever just one. You're not going to find, movies is a little bit different. A lot of times there is one writer, but you're still going to have producers. You're going to have all these other people that are providing input. Right. Yeah, exactly. And so it's no different than being in the writer's room, like if you're writing for a television show. And we've just found kind of our own way of doing it that it can be challenging at times, but the process is very different, I think, than somebody who might be sitting down and just kind of busting out a script on their own.
Sure. And so, Rodney, how about you? So you've got some very original characters also. Do you kind of start with, which is first for you, characters or concept?
Honestly, dialogue.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So,
sure.
well, it depends. It's different for each one. But mostly I will be not thinking about something and the characters will start talking to me in my head, whether I know them or not. Like I mentioned to you the other night that how Robert E. Howard used to talk about how Conan it was as if Conan was just standing over his shoulder and dictating the stories to him, and he was simply writing them down.
Yeah.
So sometimes that's what happens to me, which is where Doghouse came from. It was just we were in bed. We were getting ready to go to bed. It had been a long day. We were watching TV. We were winding down, and we were talking about Miami Vice. And I just threw out Scirocco and Nubs. And she was like, what? And I was like, Scirocco and Nubs. We were talking about buddy cop movies. I said those would be some funny names for, a couple of cops. And a couple of days later, Nubs turned into Rubs. So we came up with Scirocco and Rubs. And then they started talking to me, and it was uncontrollable. And Steph, I don't know if I'm sure you've experienced it where you have to drop everything you're doing because they're just, do they talk to you too?
Yes. Yeah. I do. I hear dialogue a lot in my head too. And everything that I do, and this is where my two passions kind of meld sometimes in a weird way, is I'm a runner. I run a crazy amount of miles per month. And so when I'm out there in the early mornings running, a lot of times I listen to podcasts. A lot of times I do listen to music, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts, but my mind still wanders. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of times that I will think of exact lines of dialogue, or specific scenes in the story. And I'm like, I need to write this down as soon as I get back home from this run, because, I'm not somewhere where I can write it down right away. And, but that does happen too, where my characters are kind of, and I think that this is true for a lot of writers, where your characters are like real people to you. And you think about it important. There's a lot of times when I'm doing character development that I will think of stuff that's happened to my characters in their background that never make it into the story, but it's helped shape them to be the person that they are. And it's important to me to know that, but the reader doesn't necessarily need to know that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And I take my phone with me. I go to the gym, and when I'm on the treadmill, and I just set it there, and it's on, my notes are opened up. And because my mind always wanders, everybody's got their headphones in and they're listening to this and that and the other. And I used to take headphones and listen to music, but I find that the droning of the background allows my mind to wander. And opens up to these, the unconscious world. And that's when they start talking to me, and I'll grab my phone and I'll just start typing, dialogue and stuff in there. And sometimes I got to turn the treadmill off, or I got to step off of it. It's just, okay, I can't lose this. I got to get it. But yeah, it's kind of magical. It's really funny because Tina will make fun of me, and she'll just, because our workstations are on opposite corners of the basement, and she'll hear me over here talking, and she'll just turn around and she'll say, "Are they talking to you again?"
If anyone ever heard that, they would wonder.
Yeah, and she'll say, "Who is it this time, or is it somebody new?" And I'll usually tell who it is, and that's how it goes. But as far as stories go, again, it's different each time. Roadkill Rampage came out of I'm a driver. I've been a driver off and on, and it's a really nice job because I can basically work whenever I want. And I drive all around the 5 surrounding states. And one day I was out driving, and it was a long day. It was a hot summer day, and I saw this dead baby raccoon on the side of the road. And I was stuck in construction traffic, and I was going about 1 mile an hour. And so I got to see it, and, it looked like it was just laying there sleeping. And I thought to myself, who's waiting on this little raccoon? Did it die trying to get something for its family? And all this stuff is going through my head. And I'm driving a company's car And I'm like, okay. So I grab my phone and I start talking into it. And when I got back to Cincinnati, I was like, and I listened to it on the way home, and I'm like, this is a story. This is a book. And I started talking to Tina about it and explaining it to her, and she was like, okay. She said, well, work it out, you know, and that's how that one came to me. It's different every time. There's no set formula for me, you know. They come to me.
Yeah.
A line from a song. Back in the 90s when I was doing superhero books, there was a line. I was listening to the radio at work, and there was a line in a song. When as soon as I heard that line, the character in one of our books, it just opened up. It was like somebody panning back with a shot and exposing his history. And I was just like, whoa. And I grabbed a notebook, a legal pad, and just started writing. And it was his whole backstory from 2 lines in a song.
Well, what was the song? You got to tell us.
It was Blink 182.
Nice.
It was this, where he was talking about, I guess his brother had died or something, and his mother had shut off his room, and you never go in there again. And it just got me thinking about the character that I had. His wife was killed, and how I was like, oh, what if I shut off her room? He shuts off the room, and it just started building, and all of a sudden I had a bigger, broader backstory for this main character. Yeah,
interesting. And Matt, I didn't hear from you necessarily. So your writing process, would you say that you emphasize character, concept, or tell us a little bit about your process?
So I did miss a little bit of what was said when Steph was talking. My net decided I wanted to be stupid. I have a theory that says, I especially with like newer writers, younger writers, I always say you have to know what your concept is, know what your climax is, and know how long it's going to get from one point A to point B. Because if you got a concept and a climax, and it's only going to take you 4 pages, don't try to turn it into a multi-issue series or vice versa. If it's going to need multiple iterations, issues to get to that, then climax, know what you're going to need to do. But I'm always really, really big on characters. Like back first 2 seasons when Walking Dead was actually a good show, it was all about the character. It wasn't about the zombies or the walkers. It was about the environment that people were in, and then you had characters that you could relate to. And that's the even our banner that I have that we hang off that shows says creating characters you can relate to and universes you want to escape into.
Yeah. And that's a good point. I've mentioned to people before that this is one man's opinion. Your mileage may vary, but the best series tend to be about the characters more so than you can make a very solid argument that Walking Dead isn't really about the zombies necessarily.
Oh yeah.
It's about the people, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. We always feel like, especially like again with Heirs of Isildur, you have a series that is basically steeped in a reality, and that character could be pretty much what you are, but then something happens that takes his life into the supernatural. And every one of us sitting here, we try to say, okay, we'll do it. If Tim walked outside of his house and something crazy happened right then, how would he react to it? That's kind of how we put every one of our characters. Now with the Misfits, I'm going to tell you about our Misfits, our Misfits path, how we had our YA story. It just wasn't going in. We were really trying to push and force it to happen. But then we have Notepad that's got all these other, nice Notepad, a Google sheet, Google document there. It's got all these other little story concepts that we had, and we had this one up there. Like she said, it was about a boy and a girl. But I was like, we were really trying to force this story. And I went up and looked at that, and I was like, Steph, give me an animal right now, not a dog or a cat. She goes, ferret. And I will never forget that. Ferret. And I was like, okay, I pick a sloth. Okay, we're going to do this. We're going to put a ferret and a sloth in there. Let's go. And immediately we knew that that's what it was going to be. And it was just, it's our ability when we do that to tell quick, short, conceptual things that we can't do in our longer stuff. Everything else is long form. Heirs, Nocturnia, everything else is long form.
Yeah.
Misfits gives us the ability to be like, hey, we have a quick little concept. Can we tell it in 4 pages? Can we tell it in 8 pages? Cool, let's write this thing and make it ridiculous. And that's how everything for Misfit goes. So it's kind of a relief because we know we're not going to have to be like, okay, this is a concept. Now it's going to take a year to get this story out there because it's going to be so big. Misfits is like, what's this quick hitter crazy story? We want to get out of our system. Okay, let's do it.
You know, you got a great point, Matt, and I'll tell you, because, you know, sometimes people ask me that, what's a good way to say this? New creators often say things like, because this is something that's true for all of us in this room. We've got a certain amount of body of product at this point, right? And it looks like maybe we made this kind of quickly, right? Or maybe we said something like, hey, I'm going to make 12 titles. When the reality is it was taking a tiny step every day for a long time. And what I mean by that, people ask me, hey, what should I do? I got this idea. It's a 14-volume graphic novel. It's 2,606 pages, and it tells the story of I say, wait, hold on, man. It's your first project. Here's my advice. Do an 8-page short story. You know, work with an artist, develop your chops. And then if the story's great, expand it to 16 pages, then do another chapter. You know, you're almost always doomed if you say, I want to do this massive project, right? Because I think all of us, myself included, we all think, well, I'm going to be J.R.R. Tolkien and I'm going to put out these volumes after volumes. But as you guys mentioned earlier, things happen. Artists move away. People get divorced. People get sick. People drop out of the project. You've got to be able to shift on the fly. And if you have, I guess the best way to say it, if you have many smaller parts, you'll be able to adapt more easily than if you have 1 or 2 great big parts.
Well, I think one of the things that's a really interesting point there is, I'll hold these covers up again. So these 2 covers that we have are done by a sister duo, Chess and Wynn, that are actually people that Steph know from her town of Visalia, California. So you see this cover here actually is a manga style. So Chess and Wynn are manga writers. And Steph has been mentoring them a lot, and subsequently we both have been mentoring them. But they've got this huge manga series called Bohemian Trials that they're working on, and that was exactly what our advice to them was you need to find a very short clip from the Bohemian Trials that would be interesting to the masses to get introduced to what you're doing. Get a project finished, because everybody can start a project. Not everybody can finish a project, and even if it's an 8-pager or a 4-pager, or in Steph's case, a 1-page story for the Ghost Comics competition, you can finish a project and people can see that. They're going to have a lot more faith in you when you try to do the bigger one because, these people know how to start a project and end it. It's going to be this thing that goes over and over and over again. There's a metal band that I won't mention the name of right now, but there's a metal band that did a Kickstarter Indiegogo and got $500,000 because they said they needed to build a brand new studio. They put out this album. This has been going on now for like 13 years. They got this money from this crowdfunding campaign and have not put out this album because the guy's like, I keep on refining my skills and I have to do this and I have to do that. People are like, dude, just shut your mouth and finish the album. We want the album. You know, this has become a comic thing.
Yeah.
Finish the comic, finish the story, get it out there, and then you can be working on your bigger thing, your magnum opus in the background.
Yeah. That's a great point. Actually, Rodney and I talked about this. I forget, I'm probably going to mess it up a little now, but perfect is the enemy of the good. Because, and by the way, I'm like this a little bit too. We tend to delay and say, well, I really want to modify this panel and I want to tweak the dialogue. When the reality is almost the best thing you can do every time is to button that thing up and send it out the door.
Yeah. When I was very young, when I'm 18, 19 years old, Jim Shooter said something at a convention that really stuck with me. He said, I could noodle with a script for days and days and days. He said, but I got to get it done. I got to get out the door because I have to do next month's script. He said, just get it done to the point where it's done enough so you can send it out. Quit noodling it because it's never going to be perfect. And the only one that knows it is you. Get it done, get it out, get on to the next one. And that's always stuck with me.
Perfect.
One of the things like what we do, I'm not sure how much for you guys, but when we write our script and we send it out to the artist, we know that the dialogue that is in there is always going to be a work in progress. We are tweaking the dialogue. We'll remove dialogue or add dialogue based on what the art is, because there could be times that the art is great, but we may have only written 3 lines of dialogue, and we're like, this page is calling for 10.
Right.
And it's going to look weak if we don't have more sound effect, more dialogue. So our fun is writing dialogue. And sometimes we actually add whole storylines and minor stories that come from the artist drawing something so cool that we're like, we've got to find dialogue for this character. Like, there's a couple of characters in Earls book 2. You even see a character in Misfits Clubhouse, the guy that's on the front page there is Captain Bluebeard. He was an afterthought character that was written into the very first Misfits Clubhouse little short story, I Don't Want Asparagus. And now Captain Bluebeard has become a recurring character just because Raheel did something so cool. Well, we got to find out to bring this character back. And the things to me are like, doing fun things where, characters come out of the blue. Where did that come from? How did this even come about? That's part of the fun and the joy of creating.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. Well, and guys, we're just about to our time here. So one thing I'd like to do last, let's go around and we'll take a quick review of your current project, where the readers can find you, and sort of like a quick pitch if you are so inclined to do that. So we'll start with Steph. Just give us a quick synopsis for Misfits Clubhouse and tell us where we can find you.
Okay, so right now we are currently on Kickstarter with the latest book that we are calling Sharks, Dragons, and Little Red Wagons. It is a compilation of some short stories. And as you see here, we've got 13 days left to go on the campaign. We're so close to funding. We're very, very close. So this is a couple of stories. We've got, as you can see here, this is the kind of the screenshot from the video that we have. But that is one of the stories. That is our Beach Bash Bonanza story that we have, where the kids go to the beach and they have to fight off Captain Bluebeard, who you see there, who obviously doesn't have a blue beard. That's part of the fun in his name. We also have a story in there entitled Old Man Willow, where the kids are having to go to the creepiest, scariest house on the block with the Old Man Willow, who is thought to be very foreboding and scary, and they may learn otherwise. And there is also the debut of a character that we are introducing into our world, our Misfits world, called Bruce McTootherson. And
great
Bruce
name, by the way. I just have to say I love that name.
Thank you. Because that is the origins of that name is from me. But I'm a huge shark fan. I'm a huge Jaws fan, and my kids and I made this Build-A-Bear shark. He's not next to me, otherwise I would show him. We named him Bruce McTootherson. We literally built a character off of him. This is a story within a story. So think of like what is it, Green Hornet? What is it? I can't think of the name right now.
Brown Hornet.
There you go. And it is Bruce McTootherson is the kid's favorite TV character, and he is an aquatic investigator. He's bumbling and clumsy and kind of a goof, but he's also very perceptive and very smart. And we actually, there you can see Bruce right there.
Oh yeah.
We actually did a story centered around. It starts off with the kids huddled around their laptop getting ready to watch the latest episode. And we had so much fun writing Bruce that honestly, and people's responses so far, even though the book isn't even out yet, over Bruce, we know that this probably isn't the last time that you're going to see him. We have some variant covers here. We've got our main artist, Raheel Mosen. That is our Out of This World cover that you see right there. The kids are kind of out there in outer space. Cover B is Backyard Bandits. That is by an artist named Emily Reset. Emily is a teen artist who is her and her parents are involved, and there's this Melbourne, Florida kind of comic group, Travis Gibb, and there's a lot of people there that that get together and have created projects together. And so Emily is a very talented artist, and we've been wanting to work with Emily for a while. And we kind of just said, go crazy with a concept. And she said, I at first she was thinking kind of a Candyland theme, and then she wanted to do a little bit of James Bond, so she did both of them, which is neat. One of the coolest mashups ever. And so that's our kids right there. Our cover C is by an artist named Peter Raimundo. Peter is a former Disney artist. He was an artist during the Disney Renaissance, so during Mulan, Lilo and Stitch, Emperor's New Groove. And he is now a writer and illustrator of his own children's books. And some of those books are aquatic themed. He's got a book called Third Grade Mermaid and one called I Am Not a Fish. And so we knew that since we had a story called Beach Bash Bonanza, and that we have a Bruce McPherson, that he needed to do kind of like an aquatic theme cover for us. And as far as the swag goes, as you see there, we have our socks. These socks, this is the fourth, I think, socks that we have done. And they are actually really incredibly comfortable. I'm actually wearing a pair right now. And we thought it would be really fun to just do some Bruce socks and have it be all of his ridiculous facial expressions. Our artist Raheel has really vibed on the character of Bruce and making him come alive, all these crazy, ridiculous facial expressions. So we did a little, compilation of his greatest silly faces and put them on the socks. So yeah, and then there you can see that we've got different tiers that you can do add-ons. Basically, if there's something that you see on here that you want to know a little bit more about, feel free to message us and let us know, and we will be happy to help you.
I have a quick question that ties into this. Steph, when you make first of all, great design on your Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, that's all Matt.
Okay, cool.
I am not the graphic designer of the group at all. That's all him.
When you go to your Kickstarter, do you have your former products available as add-ons?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Always.
Yep.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, there's tiers that sometimes there's tiers that got like want to get everything. Here's the tier, but we try to make sure it's in there because you never was for the first time, and you want them to be able to as easily as possible be able to get those items. So yeah, we always have as much as we can in the campaign.
Absolutely. Sure. And again, if you're new to us and you want to know and you want to know about more of our products or have any questions and you don't see what it is that you're looking for, or you might want something a little bit more, feel free to message us. We've got the tiers pretty down as far as add-ons go, but there have been a couple times where someone's messaged us and said, hey, what can I get this thing? And we've literally made a tier for them. We're like, sure, we'll make the tier and you can back this and get what it is that you want.
Yeah, it's almost kind of useful to have everything available as an add-on too, because some people say, well, I want A and G. There's always one weird combo that I don't have.
Exactly. And we are also offering, which we do for almost every comic that we do, draw me in. So if you want to say, you know what, I can show my friends and family that I am in a comic book. We've got some options. We've got a story called Peril, where you can actually be drawn in as a character in that story. That's
cool. Very cool. Congratulations.
It's going to be she's going to be on Scout as well, so you might be able to see her face.
Yes.
Comic book store across the country.
Yeah, we're affiliated with Scout Comics. Misfits is published under them. So again, yeah, you could say that you're in nationwide distribution.
Cool. Awesome. Well, it looks terrific, and I wish you guys every success with it. I think it's a very original looking project. And like I say, I admire this. I think this is a very gutsy call for you guys. That it's what I mean by that is if you are following your material already, which I was one of your followers, this is something that's very different. Like you kind of went outside your comfort zone, as you were. And it's something that I'm trying to do this year too. So I'm watching this not only with a fan attention, but also with professional attention as well.
It's a challenge, but it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. It's good. It's supposed to show in life. You never know where life is going to take you and what roads you're going to go down, because I'm sure that Matt can agree to this because we talked about it when we first started on this journey. We did not think that we'd be doing something like this, but yet here we are, and we love it. So
yeah,
it's
believe
great.
me, that is something that I understand deeply. It's
Yeah,
as I'm fond of
say
saying,
never.
yeah, I've been doing things this year that you could
Yeah.
hold a gun on me, and I never would have predicted any of this.
I know, same here.
So let's switch over to Rodney. So let's talk a little bit about Doghouse, Rodney. And first, tell us a little bit about the tiers and kind of walk us through your Kickstarter.
Okay. Well, we've got, let's see there. We're just about there. A little over 48 hours in. So cool. That's awesome.
Good start, buddy.
Thank you. We've got the early dog special. I almost said early bird. We've got the early dog special where you can just get the first issue with the, I call it the alpha cover. It's the main cover. Until you can see it there 11 p.m. tomorrow night for $10. And then we've got the artist, the Kickstarter exclusive there. That is C. Michael Lanning's cover and my variant cover there, and they're both colored by Bruno da Costa.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice job.
Absolutely fabulous colorist that we have started using here recently. Then we have, of course, the first 25 backers get the free mini print, and it's a holofoil mini print of the cover alpha.
Cool.
See Michael's cover. And then we have Doghouse. And just real quick, it's Doghouse is it's set in New Grouse City, just south of the Tuna Tunnel, and it features our two crime-sniffing detectives, Scirocco and Rubs. They're called to a local bar to investigate the death of its owner, Eddie. Their two prime suspects are Sin, who is Eddie's longtime friend and bartender, and Fleeby, his side piece. So during the course of the investigation, it centers around the last 48 hours of his death and all the strange happenings and occurrences that have been going on at the bar. So it's good, ornery, fun. It's not lewd or anything. It's just adult humor. So just kind of think Howard the Duck with mutts.
Yeah, cool.
And there's some samples of the work there, and that right there is page 1, and that is as risque as it's going to get. The rest of it is just just goofy sexual innuendo jokes and stuff like that. But C did the artwork for it, and I'm doing I wrote it and colored it. I'm coloring it. I've got 3 pages left to color. And it's a whole nother foray into it gives me a chance to write cartoony stuff with adult humor. My pitter patter stuff is the kid friendly stuff, and this is really, it's more NC-17. A lot of people, when you say adult humor, they what does that mean? And we had to do some rewording in the campaign to make sure that people knew that there wasn't any nudity, there wasn't any foul language. It's just,
Gotcha.
It's just adult humor. And there's a rundown of some of the characters there. That's Scirocco and Rubs. His name is Wagner or Wagner. If he's talking to the ladies, it's Wagner. If he's talking to anybody else, it's Wagner. Yeah. And then that's the bar owner, Eddie. And then we have Fleeby. And
Fleeby. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Yes.
clever.
Yes, and the sit up there's the bartender, and then we've got Jimmy Scams and Squeaks, who are the head of the Mouse Mafia, and they're in charge of the Spice Syndicate. And then we have our friendly, lovable little cuddly cat that always hangs out at the dog bar, Otis, who actually made an appearance in issue 1 of Pitter Patter. And then we have Ferdinand, our Colombian dirt frog. And
Cool.
You can see how he plays into it all. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
These characters are so great.
Yeah, they're great characters, man.
I can't wait for everybody to read it. We had so much fun writing it. Just sitting here giggling and just like a little kid, and I would read Tina some things, and she's like, no, you can't do that. I was like, okay, well, how about this? She's like, no, do it this way. And I was like, okay. And and if anybody knows me, I'm just a goofy, ornery person. I just like to have fun, and I've got a great sense of humor. and I grew up on Looney Tunes, so there's always that two levels of humor. There's the adult humor for the adult jokes for the adults, and then the stuff for the kids, and the kids don't get the adult stuff. There's our variant covers.
How many covers we talking, Rodney?
I think there's 8, or let's see. There's the alpha cover. There's the ghost. We're calling the ghost cover there, and then that is the C cover, and then there's my cover there, which is cover D, and then Daphne Lays does the cover there, cover F. Daphne is a huge anime artist, and then Ian Chase Nichols, who works on the Tick and has done stuff on the Turtles and stuff, does cover F, which I absolutely love. And then we have a couple of the naughty covers there. And then we have some sketch covers. So you can get a sketch cover, and you can have anybody draw any of the characters from Doghouse.
Cool.
This reminds me, I don't know if anybody knew of the Disney movie back in the 80s called Oliver and Company. This is like Oliver and Company for adults.
Yeah.
With a little bit of Who Framed Roger Rabbit vibe to it. It's great.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny because I wasn't thinking and it's funny because that stuff is there in the back of my head. So it's there and it's influencing, and that's probably where some of the stuff comes from. But you don't see it until you sit back and you look at it, and then you say, "Oh, okay, Oliver and Company," and I'm like, "Oh, she's right." And
it's
and you're like the fourth person this week that said Roger Rabbit. I'm like, exactly. I was a huge fan of Roger Rabbit. And of course, there's all of our previous projects. There are books that you have access to in the Kickstarter that you can get. The first 3 issues of Roadkill Rampage, the first 2 issues of Pitter Patter or One Shot Unchained, the trade of Peanut Pudding and Jelly issues 1 through 4, and issues 5 and 6. And then these were so much fun. It's a menu, the backer goals. It's a menu with all dog themed dishes and shots and stuff. And then we have the live music. It's so much fun. And we have the live music list where there's a live band every night, and the names of the bands are just hilarious. So
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Those are fun. Those are nice. I can't wait to get those because I'm hanging them both right up here.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can hang those. I have a bunch of stuff like that in my garage. I could go in my garage.
And then the stretch goals, we have a cocktail sword which plays a part in the story.
That's cool.
So that's at $12.50. And then actually the Ferdinand here, the holofoil sticker, that is C's daughter, Jaden. She's 17 years old. She drew that.
Oh, that's a cool design.
She is amazing. Yeah. And that's going to be a holofoil sticker. And we've actually got shirts of that too. That's available as a shirt.
She is showing off some of her work before, man. She is
she is talented. Stunning. Yeah, I had no idea. And then we have the holofoil trading card at 2,000 of Shirako and Rubs, the 2 main characters. And then we have what is that called? The coaster. I'm a little brain dead right now. They have the coaster at 2,500. That's really cool. And we've got the established in 2023. They're on right next to the logo. And then we have the Swizzle sticks, the drink mixer. So we were trying to think of all bar themed stuff, and we wanted to do a book of matches, but we weren't sure of the legalities of shipping, things that can combust. So we decided
that's probably a smart move.
Yeah. So there we go. That's
nicely
it in a
done.
nutshell.
Nicely
Thank you very
done.
much.
Sure.
A lot of fun. And I encourage everybody to go check it out. You'll get a good laugh and a great artwork and just a blast.
Awesome. Well, I want to say just in closing, I certainly wish you all just the best of luck with these terrific projects. They look fantastic. we got a backer. All right, wonderful. That's always good.
Nice. Excellent.
I'm actually a fan of all your works here too. I'm not just talking the talk, as it were. I actually follow both of you, and I'm fortunate enough to now we're starting to get to know each other. And I do want to say thanks for coming on to this first live broadcast. I was very interested in learning a little bit more about you, and I hope that the viewers enjoyed that too. I always like to hear about, the creative process and who you are as people, because I think it helps put a face to the project, as it were. So I'm grateful for that. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
So other than that, yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. I just want to say thanks to the viewers for tuning in. And of course, if you like to follow our kind of stuff, don't forget we're going to see Rodney again this Wednesday when he's talking about UFOs. That's going to be a fun show. You'll be hearing more about that shortly. And I've been keeping my mouth shut, but I got a project on the burner myself. I'm going to wait till I'm not hosting a show to announce that, because this is about these guys tonight. But I hope that you'll stay tuned and follow along to some of the projects that are coming up. Once again, thank you, viewers, for coming on. This has been an episode of The Creative Cranium. Thank you again.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Mickey, Fairy, Slothy, and Stig are back.
In Misfits Clubhouse, sharks, dragons, and little red wagons. Our lovable quartet knows how to turn anything into a big adventure.
And this issue is no exception.
They have a face-off with the ever-feared Old Man Willie.
There's a beach bash bonanza in their future.
And we also get to meet for the very first time their favorite TV hero,
Bruce McTutherson,
Aquatic Investigator. This campaign will have multiple collectible covers by awesome artists.
and as you'd expect from us, some unique swag. We hope you'll stick around.
Come on in and hang out in the clubhouse.
Join along in the shenanigans.
I'm a setting sun, but I'll never run. I'm a dead man walking. I'm a dead man walking. I will stay and fight as long as I'm alive. I'm a dead man walking. I'm a dead man walking. Till I die. And kill.
In a world where creatures of myth and legend exist, a covert task force is charged with keeping humanity safe from supernatural threats. And when young Nancy Moon stumbles into the eternal battle between good and evil, she finds... Oh my god, will you shut up? What's happening? Agent Beckett here. Aren't you tired of stuff like that? Want something different? Roll the tape. Whoops. Sorry about that. That's a song I'm writing for my ex. Okay, here we go. Yeah, that's more like it. Alrighty. Welcome to the world of the mythicals. We have it all. Monsters. Magic. Government agents. He's the strong silent type. This guy? Ugh, gross, dude. Get some kind of cream or something. Lots of 90s style action. Pew pew pew. And that strong female lead alluded to earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention a dashing field commander with a great sense of fashion. Look at those glasses. South River Studios presents The Mythicals, Issue 1. Buy it, if you dare. Ugh, will you can it already? How'd you get free? Now beat it before I lose my cool. So what are you waiting for? Sign up today. Like right now.
Sign up today on Indiegogo.
The Doctor is in, baby. This is Doc Blalock, and you're watching the Madness Comic Network.
Comic Books for Kids provides comic books to kids in hospitals and cancer centers across the U.S. It's a place where we can all work together to make sure every child has a comic book. 100% of all proceeds go towards the kids. It's about making a difference, and while they're in the hospital, allowing them to fly like a superhero, battle dragons, or rescue teddy bears. We are in every state in the country and now support over 160 hospitals. Every month,